Cool. So first up, let's talk about the original iPod first generation. This was released in 2001. Before we actually show the product, let's show a quick clip of the unveiling back when Jobs was here and on stage. There he is in its vintage raw footage. That's all I could find given how old these clips are. Audience is going crazy. It's pretty thick, but not really. I mean, compared to like the Zune or something. But yeah, I mean, at the time, people probably didn't realize just how impactful that sort of moment was going to be in terms of how that could transition the world of music and the world of technology. So that is essentially where it all happened and where the whole music revolution happened. Only 5 gigs of storage, but obviously the motto, 1,000 songs in your pocket. I'm sure everybody's heard that, and that's really what allowed the marketing and the sales hype to catch on. Tris, you have been on the podcast before, and we were talking about GPT, we're talking about AI, and usually on the show we talk about the future, but today we're talking about the past. So let's why don't you take us to the past, show us the first iPod, and give us a bit of a description, mate, about what it entails.
Okay, so this is the first iPod. 5 gigabytes of storage, FireWire connector, and it was described as having a packet of cards in your pocket.
Yeah.
So, deck of cards. And yeah, this one still works.
Wow.
Battery and everything. Obviously got a backlight on it. That works.
Do you have music on it?
I do, yeah. If you want to give it a listen.
Yeah, you can play it. And actually, I'll get copyright strikes. Don't do that.
Yeah.
I completely forgot about that.
And there's no audio out without the headphone jack, right? There's no speaker, which is quite interesting.
Crazy.
Thinking about it now,
Yeah.
you could, if it was your phone, you'd just play it, but that wasn't an option.
And no AirPods, obviously. We have to have the old wire. I mean,
these are the old one, the proper.
Yeah.
Which ones?
Yeah, the headphones, they looked very weird. I remember the little metal bits used to fall off all the time when you almost screwed on to some degree. One thing that obviously is iconic about this one is the wheel. So how does that work? Just bring people back to nostalgia, memory lane. How did that work?
So the very first iPod behaves like an old rotary phone. So it actually physically moves, whereas immediately afterwards, they're like, this is not a good idea. We need to service these. So original one moves, and after that, they stop that quickly.
I never had one of these, but I had the colourful slim one a couple of generations afterwards. Was that the Nano or something?
Something like that, yeah.
Okay, cool. So that's the original iPod. Chaps, what are your reactions, your thoughts when you see this? David, let's start with yourself, sir.
I guess a little bit shocking, the fact that you have to have that cable.
Yeah.
I haven't seen one of these I can't remember the last time. I think back then, compared to what I used to run with my little CD Walkman, it used to skip, and I don't know, I think I've missed a bit of a generation with this one because I went to the one afterwards. But yeah, I remember when it first came out, I was thinking, wow, this is revolutionary. I did somewhat use a MP3 player, but I managed to brick it somehow when I was trying to upload it. But yeah, I remember thinking, well, it's Apple, it must be good from a user experience perspective.
I always remember my dad telling me a story about a Walkman, how he was on a bike ride one day and he had the Walkman here with the cassette tape in it. So this would have even been before the CDs. And he went over a bump and it just opened and the cassette tape just goes flying out and he's just cycling off as it smashes into the ground. Obviously, you don't have the problem with this because it was like one of the first ever music devices which you just downloaded the songs back in iTunes, obviously, was what it was called back then. Haven't used that term for a while. I think they just call it Apple Music and Apple Podcasts now.
I think when that very first iteration, there wasn't actually iTunes. They bought another company first.
Oh, wow.
So you had this weird pseudo software, and then like about a year or two later, iTunes came along. So.
Interesting. Ian, what's your take when you see the original iPod, sir?
Similarly to David, I had a CD man, which I used to go jogging with. It was a bit of a waste of time, really. You jog about 5 seconds after the cache was burnt, and then you couldn't hear anything without the skipping. So moving to... a solid state. Is this solid state? It's a hard drive.
It's a micro disc.
Yeah. So I had an iRiver, which I think was solid state. Similarly, I kind of missed it and then went to the Nano. This wasn't iTunes though. Getting music on this.
It's iTunes from around 2002, 2003, but in 2001 they bought another company, and that's
okay. Because it was quite painful with all of them compared to now in the sense of getting music on the device. I mean, it seemed relatively easy by comparison, but you had to put your CD in, get your CD content off, unless you bought it directly, but get the content off, put it on the device.
Yeah.
So if you set off on your jog and you're like, I haven't got the track I wanted, you have to go.
Yeah, it was a
remember to go back, put it on the device. But it's still, incredible as always, and I think we're going to repeat this several times in the show. it was the design. You know, there were other devices at the time that had bigger hard drives, were maybe more flexible. I think the screen was maybe criticized at the time as well for not having a very big display, but it didn't stop it because it did everything very well.
But it has a backlight on the screen.
Yeah, it does. I'm trying to show you. But I think the interesting thing about the original iPod as well is it's Firewire for 400 megabits a second, whereas it would have been 11 megabits with USB 1.
Okay.
So to fill it up, you can fill it up very quickly.
Yeah, it was quick.
That's cool.
Whereas the Creative Zen and iRiver were quite slow.
I used to download from, do you remember LimeWire?
Yeah.
This is a not PG story, but I remember once we had family coming around for, I think it was at Christmas or something, and you know I'm the tech kid, so like, hey, get the new Fast and Furious movie for us. So I go into LimeWire, download Fast and Furious, plug in the HDMI cable, put it on the TV, and let's just say it was a 18+ movie called Fast and Furious instead. So that was part of the challenge that you had back then. It wasn't like you could go onto Spotify and you know, guarantee the quality of the song or the film, and that was like one of the problems with this. But iTunes really transformed that, didn't they? Because they allowed it was like 99p a song or something back then. Yeah. Did you guys ever have the CD cassette towers with all the music on? Yeah,
and then the car used to have the flip book, which would have at least 100 CD case.
Yeah,
and then at some point they all just ended up on the floor in the car anyway. I don't know how. But those books were pretty useless to try to scroll through.
So this was the transition. This was where it really happened. And alongside this, there was an iconic TV commercial, which I'm going to play on the screen right now. And everybody will remember this. And what I love about this commercial is it doesn't even show the product. It's just people dancing, the iconic headphones with the wire, the iPod, and then different backgrounds, which from a marketing perspective is brilliant because it's just different colors. It's really visual. It just pops and it just keeps you stimulated. I mean, this was before TikTok. I mean, this was like the pioneers of the thing of keeping people hooked and engaged. And no words, no description, not showing 5 gig, not showing how many songs. It's just people dancing, having a great time, holding the product, which was really the genius of Apple's marketing and why it continues to be the leaders in that space. What are your thoughts on the ad that came with that, Tris? What's your take on that?
I remember back with these headphones, they were actually a fashion statement at the time.
They were.
You easily get mugged as well. For
having black ones was like the ugly version, wasn't it? Like the Sony headphones or something. You know?
It's the having blue messages of the day. Generally, you're going to go getting.
Blue versus green. What's your take, David, on the advert itself?
I wish I could have danced like that when I was younger, for sure. But yeah, I definitely think it sort of creates more an expression of freedom. And movement, which is quite new, especially again from my generation. I think it was, must have been about 14 at that time. And before, again, it wasn't ever seen to be expressive like that was a good thing. You know, we're quite subdued in the way how you could publicly be seen. So yeah, I think it was quite a bold move.
That's a great point because it goes back to the old ad of the PC versus Mac, and the PC is like it's like dressed like Bill Gates, and then it has a Mac and there's a guy just hanging out and it's like I use a Mac, and that was like the expression, and that advert is like a good way of describing that in the music sense. What's your take, Ian, on that clip, on that advert, on that commercial?
It reminded me of a couple of things. I'm not sure if I'm going to get it exactly right, but I think the box for this device was really unique at the time. I don't think they had anything. I'm trying to think if they had anything prior that was similar, but it didn't have anything about compatibility. You know, a very reduced amount about compatibility compared to Zune, iRiver, or whatever it might have been, which told you which operating systems, transfer speed. The box was really about the music, was about the product, was about the experience, which you see again in the ad, and that's consistent and remains consistent today, as you know. And the other thing it reminded me of, and I don't know why, but was people using these devices for events, for parties. Because prior to that, you needed a proper DJ, you needed some kind of kit, but then this was like, well, I can get this, make a whole playlist for the night, connect it to the speakers, and we're done and we can go. Because I'm quite old, and I remember the point at a party where something would finish and it's like, oh, there's silence, people are scrambling around, putting the next CD on, choosing it from the flip book. And this was like just bosh and you're off.
I remember having a speaker which it connect at the bottom, you just like set it on, and it was so revolutionary.
Yes. Was that a white one? Was it split on both sides, 2 speakers
on
each side?
Yes,
I'm trying to think what that is, but yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah, exactly what you're describing is what I had. I don't remember I don't think it was an official Apple one. I think it was just
JBL or something.
Yeah, something like that.
I think it might have been. Wild.